All right, so we're going deep today, deep into unconventional relationship advice.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to this BuzzFeed article. It's basically like a highlight reel of all the wildest relationship hacks from TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and, the kind of advice that makes you think, wait a minute, could that actually work? Like separate bedrooms, free passes, even scheduled intimacy.
Wow. You know what I think is so fascinating about all of this is how these tips challenge the traditional relationship playbook. It's almost like couples are saying, forget the cookie cutter mold. We're going to figure out what works best for us.
Right, exactly. And it's refreshing. Who says there's only one right way to be in a relationship?
Totally.
This BuzzFeed article, it's packed with stories from real couples who are throwing out the rule book and coming up with some truly unique approaches. And one of the biggest themes that really jumped out at me was this whole idea of space and independence.
Yeah. It is really interesting to see how many couples are prioritizing individual space within their relationships. And we're not just talking about having separate hobbies, but things like separate bedrooms, separate vacations, even separate friend groups. And it's not about wanting to be apart. It's about recognizing that. Having time and space for yourself can actually make the relationship stronger.
Yeah, it's like absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
The art to talk about one couple who swears by separate vacations. And they come back feeling refreshed and more connected than ever.
Yeah.
It's almost like hitting the reset button on the relationship.
Oh, yeah. And there's actually some psychological backing for this. Having personal space can reduce conflict. It can also improve sleep quality. And it can also help individuals maintain their sense of self, which is so crucial for a healthy relationship. I mean, think about it. When you feel good about yourself and you have a strong sense of who you are, you bring that positive energy into the relationship.
Okay, but I'm already imagining someone listening to this and thinking, hold on, separate bedrooms. Isn't that like the opposite of what couples are supposed to do?
Right.
But the article had several examples. Couples who say separate bedrooms have been a game changer for their relationship, less resentment about snoring, better sleep, more energy for quality time together. Who knew?
It might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes a little distance can actually bring you closer. The key is to find a balance that works for both partners. And that's really what all these unconventional approaches have in common. It's about customization. It's about saying, hey, let's ditch the one-size-fits-all mentality and figure out what truly works for our unique dynamic.
Okay, so he's got space and independence covered. But this BuzzFeed article goes even further, diving into some pretty unconventional communication and boundary setting strategies.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting. Because we're seeing couples push the boundaries of traditional relationship norms when it comes to honesty and transparency. It's not just about open communication. It's about being proactive and intentional, about preventing conflicts and understanding each other's needs on a deeper level.
So we're talking about things like having a free pass system to get out of unwanted social obligations, using a specific phrase to signal when they need to have a truly honest conversation.
And even talking openly about crushes.
I know, right? Now, the idea of talking about crushes might sound a little unorthodox, but some couples find that it actually helps build trust and security within the relationship. It's about acknowledging that attraction to other people is normal and doesn't diminish the love and commitment you have for your partner. It's about taking the secrecy and the taboo out of the equation and creating a space for open and honest dialogue. Right. The key here seems to be that both partners are on the same page and agree to these unconventional approaches. Because let's be real, if one person is springing a free pass on their partner, without any prior discussion, that's probably going to lead to more conflict, not less.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Communication is key. And these couples are demonstrating a willingness to have those sometimes awkward or uncomfortable conversations in order to build a stronger foundation for their relationship. It's about moving beyond the surface level and addressing those deeper needs and insecurities that can often lead to conflict if left unaddressed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And speaking of unconventional communication, the article mentioned this couple who records video messages to their future selves during arguments.
Oh, wow. Isn't that fascinating? It's like a built-in time machine for perspective. They essentially record messages, reminding themselves why they love each other and why the argument isn't worth staying mad over.
Okay, that is brilliant. It's like hitting the pause button on the fight and injecting a dose of long-term thinking.
Exactly. It's a clever way to tap into those positive emotions and shift their mindset from anger and resentment to understanding and forgiveness. And it highlights the importance of remembering the bigger picture. the love and commitment that bind them together, even amidst disagreements.
Yeah. It's a reminder that relationships are a marathon, not a sprint, and that navigating those inevitable bumps in the road
Mm.
requires a healthy dose of patience, understanding,
Mm.
and creative problem solving. And speaking of challenging the status quo, this BuzzFeed article also had a whole section on couples who are rethinking traditional relationship norms.
Yeah, this is where we really see couples pushing back against societal expectations and saying, hey, just because it's always been done this way doesn't mean it's the best way for us.
Right? We're talking about things like ditching traditional gift giving, opting out of stressful family gatherings,
Hmm.
and even, brace yourselves, scheduled sex.
I know. I know scheduled sex doesn't exactly sound like the epitome of romance, but for some couples,
Yeah.
especially those with busy schedules and demanding lives, it can actually be a way to prioritize intimacy and ensure that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. It's like taking a proactive approach to
Mhm.
keeping the spark alive instead of just hoping that spontaneity will magically happen amidst the chaos of everyday life.
Right. Exactly. And it's not about taking the passion out of it. It's about being intentional and making a conscious effort to nurture that connection. One couple in the article mentioned that instead of exchanging gifts, they plan experiences for each other, like one partner might surprise the other with a weekend getaway centered around their favorite hobby, or they'll take turns planning dates that introduce each other to new things.
I love that. It's like they're creating these shared adventures
Yeah.
that build memories and deepen their connection. It's about investing in experiences
Yeah.
rather than just material possessions. What about those couples who are skipping family gatherings? I can imagine that raising some eyebrows.
It's definitely a bold move, but it highlights the importance of setting boundaries and prioritizing your own well-being as a couple. If certain family gatherings are a source of stress or conflict, it's perfectly okay to opt out and create your own traditions that feel more aligned with your values and needs.
Right. It's about putting your relationship first and recognizing that you don't have to conform to societal expectations if they're not serving you.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think this whole idea of challenging norms and customizing your approach to relationships ties back to that theme of space and independence we discussed earlier.
Absolutely. It's all about recognizing that. There's no one-size-fits-all model for a happy and fulfilling relationship. What works for one couple might be completely different from what works for another, and that's okay. The key is to be open to exploring different approaches, communicating openly and honestly with your partner, and finding what truly resonates with you as a couple.
And that's where this deep dive gets really exciting because it opens up a whole world of possibilities. It's like we're saying, hey, let's throw out the rule book and get creative. Let's experiment and see what works.
Totally. And that's what makes these unconventional approaches so refreshing. They encourage us to think outside the box and to challenge those deeply ingrained beliefs about what a relationship should look like. They remind us that relationships are constantly evolving and that there's always room for growth, exploration, and a healthy dose of unconventional wisdom.
Okay, so we've talked about separate vacations, scheduled intimacy, and ditching traditional gifts. But this BuzzFeed article is a treasure trove of unconventional wisdom. And there are a few more gems I just have to share. One couple mentioned that they never watch TV separately.
I love that. It's such a simple but powerful way to stay connected. Instead of zoning out in front of separate screens, they're choosing to share that experience, laughing together, discussing what they're watching, and maybe even discovering new shows or movies they wouldn't have found on their own.
Right. It's about being present with each other and making an effort to stay connected, even in the midst of everyday routines. And then there was another couple who talk about the importance
Yeah.
of having separate bank accounts.
Yeah. Financial independence can be a major source of stress in relationships. So it makes sense that some couples find this approach beneficial. By maintaining separate finances, they're avoiding potential conflicts, overspending habits, and preserving a sense of autonomy.
Right. It's not about being secretive or keeping things from each other. It's about having a clear understanding of who's responsible for what and having the freedom to manage your own money without feeling like you're constantly being monitored or judged.
Exactly. It's about finding a system that works for both partners and promotes financial harmony. And let's not forget the couple who swears by showering together every day.
Showering together every day. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but they emphasize that it's not about being intimate every time. It's more about creating this shared ritual where they can unwind and connect and talk about their day without distractions.
Right. It's almost like a mini date built into their daily routine, and it highlights how important those small, consistent moments of connection are. It's not always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's about finding those little pockets of time to just be present with each other.
Yeah. So as you can see, This deep dive has been a wild ride through the world of